still wrangle with my husband from time to time over whether a question is a stupid question or not. He has this way of, and I think we've talked about this before, sort of hijacking a conversation with questions. And sometimes they're such non sequiturs that they throw me off. And I have a hard time kind of staying conscious in the moment of being aware that that question just threw me off. If I could do that, I feel like I could say, wait a minute, where did that come from? But instead, I react with this sort of big defensive charge. So I know there's something underneath that needs digging.
I love that, because actually that was the first thing you worked with me over in the carriage house. I think it was.
Yeah.
It was like, and I love that it went away and you got so many big shifts in your marriage. And then lots of times it comes back around to, oh yeah, that one.
Yeah. I mean, it's still very good. It's still, it's still so much better than it was 3 or 4 years ago. But then just every now and then there's this little snag.
Yeah. So that's what's good, that you caught it and you're like, wait a minute, that's still there. Okay, let's take care of it. Because I do think it triggers into a part of you that, like you said, defensiveness is always just a little gold mine, a golden thread to a childhood wound.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
And we could even work through that, Barbara. It's sort of the level of thing that might respond well to this forgiveness flip. And Barbara, do you have a situation where your husband has hijacked a conversation that you'd be willing to let us walk you through?
I mean, it almost seems laughably trivial, but let me just throw it out there.
It's the kind of stuff that happens in marriage, though, I mean,
yeah.
So it's kind of, it's what we do.
So I said something to him like, because we have this big expense and that big expense, I'm not going to pay down the credit card bill in total. And then he said to me, why not? And so I said, because I just repeated what I had said at the beginning of the sentence, because we had these 2 other big expenses this month. And then he responded angrily, don't talk to me like you think I'm stupid. So I was like, but you were talking to me like you were stupid. I didn't say that.
Did you say that?
No, I didn't.
Oh, okay.
No, I don't know.
I thought you were.
Might have been better if I had, I don't know. But I felt like that. I felt like I just said why. Why are you asking me why when I just said why? I put the why first. And anyway, I could tell that my response was disproportionate to the actual content of what was happening. And so it's like, okay, this is a thing that happens. I perceive his questions as oppositional in some way, as if that reason that I gave for why wasn't a good enough reason. So he was asking me for a better reason than the one I already gave without actually saying it. So my sort of sense of how he sees me is as not having good enough reasons for whatever I say.
Right. By the way, I wanted to tell everyone before we go forward with this, just because I want everybody to work along with this kind of in your own situation. Remember, you've got this in your portal. We're going to turn that on either tonight or tomorrow morning, and you'll have both the free fall into fearless faith and this. But that one of the first people that got a really big shift by working this was someone that was in the first mastermind, and some of you know her. She's been to a zillion retreats and is very cerebral, and found forgiveness for. She had the story that on some level her parents didn't love her, and by working through this and then noticing a picture in childhood, she just leapt over into complete forgiveness and falling madly in love with her parents. And knowing that it was all okay to start with, and they always did the best they could. And so you just don't know what's going to come out of this. So I would say feel free to go ahead and work it. And don't let the fact that I put that little caveat on there keep you from going into this. So just sort of almost as a little meditation and an introduction to forgiveness, the idea that we have something to forgive implies that something or someone did something wrong to start with. As we really drop into questioning our thinking and finding that many ways there was never a problem except our thinking about the situation, when we're no longer stuck in needing others to change, apologize, or make up for their actions, we gain great freedom. Those wishes were only, and without those conditions that we need them to apologize or have acted differently, we suddenly see that we have many options for being happy, feeling connected, achieving our goals. Sometimes that works very simply as we look at a situation and easily see another's innocence. Other times it is more subtle. So we're going to just go through these steps. There's the short version. Again, these are the short version. And I want you guys not necessarily I wanted to show you this, but I'm going to read you the long version as kind of a little meditation. So Barbara and everybody, let yourself go into your situation and find a situation, Linda, for example, a specific one where your husband didn't manage his time in a way that worked for you. And when you get time later, again, you're working this later more, we're going through it more quickly today. Write down or just visualize the things they did or said that made you mad, made you feel wrongly characterized or unfairly accused, or see things that you want to defend, where you want to defend, shut them out, or attack back. I'm asking people to post it. It says here, send to me if you want to increase the feeling of being held and heard for the littlest part of you. Like when you do this, you can either post them on the group or send them to me so that you feel more held. But this is you holding yourself. Really feel your feelings and let the anger and hurt come up while you're writing each one as a separate statement. So Michelle, you could go back to that moment with your friend when she said that stuff. Or you could go back to a moment in childhood. I know it was a whole lifestyle, so that one might be hard to find, but you might have a picture of something where you wanted your mom to not, include you in being her best friend also. So notice where this event has triggered shame. Go through each thing that person said or did one by one. Ask if you suspect or fear that what they are seeing in you may be true, or the way they reacted is something you feel ashamed about, that you don't want, or you've worked hard to rid yourself of. This is the part where it's more about how they see you. Can you let them be your teacher and find where maybe it has been true of you, even in the smallest examples, when you really get honest and see that you can find your innocence in that? What if they are right? Were you doing the best you can? Can you forgive yourself? So again, this is based on the idea that we don't like the way we react in other people's presence. And that's why we're mad at them. This is the twist on it, that the way they acted got us to act in a way that we don't like. And so we're mad at them for acting that way because it triggered a part of us that we don't like. So that's why this whole thing on forgiveness is often about forgiving yourself first. And then it's sometimes easier. So again, this is a lot like this wheel of self-love right here, where you find the spark of love behind your actions. So what if you did respond to him and lash back? So Barbara, if we take your situation, have you found anything with this?
Well, I mean, yeah, it's sort of like, what if my reasons for making that decision about not paying the charge card are not legitimately good enough reasons? And so maybe I'm afraid that I can't justify my judgment in a way that will satisfy him.
Yeah, I think maybe that is kind of what we landed on before too. That yeah, if it points, if it shines a light on a place where you already suspect a not enoughness, or maybe you thought you were fine until he asked the question and asked it in that way, and then all of a sudden you go, uh-oh.
Well, yeah, I mean, if I think about the other times when the questions sort of, you know, jigger up the conversation, they're like questions that it would A, never have occurred to me to ask, B, don't seem to be any of my business. C, I'm not the least bit curious about, and D, I don't see how knowing the answer to that question would illuminate anything else but the answer to that question. So then that throws me so much. And then I sort of go, wait a minute, was I completely disoriented when I was in this conversation with whoever, you know, whatever the original situation was that I was talking to him about? So yeah, there is like a level of self-doubt that gets triggered by those questions that seem so out of left field.
And on the surface, you feel like he's disoriented for not getting you, for asking the out of left field or the stupid questions or the weren't you listening or why are you hijacking it and taking it in that way? That's not even what I'm talking about. I mean, so you end up being kind of on the surface annoyed with him, but it is, the triggered part of it. Yeah. It keeps bringing me back to the patent leather shoes. I don't know why, because Barbara has
Okay.
a childhood situation where she thought she was doing something really good and she got blindsided by her dad getting really mad at her and really kind of shaming her. And I think, that level of disorientation, of feeling like, wait a minute, what's the reality here? Am I crazy or are they crazy? Who's right?
Yes.
And
Yeah.
I think
Yeah.
some
No, that's yeah. I think you're onto something there. And then the flip side of that is not feeling heard or perceived in my own reality. And so when he's asking questions that are so far out of my zone of interest or awareness, then I feel like, wait a minute, he's not even listening to my story. He's
yeah,
not, he's not, he's not perceiving what I'm trying to communicate.
right. And honestly, the forgiveness flip is one of those shortcuts. All the happiness hacks are just sort of my little shortcuts. When I noticed I
Sure.
wasn't sitting down and doing the work, I was doing what are these other things I've been doing? And I think this one would be a really great one to do a worksheet on, because he's not listening to my story. When you get caught up in this level of disorientation or anger at him, then you're no longer listening to your story either. Or I'm
Yeah.
finding
Yeah. Yeah.
so
Because there wasn't enough corroboration of my reality.
right. And I mean, this week alone, I've noticed a number of people, Christy, Liz, Michelle, or I mean, Mary, working on keeping your own counsel. Like, wait, what do I think? Because we can
Right.
be so thrown off by being in other people's business. And a lot of things get taken care of if we just come back and trust our reality and say, well, wait, my thinking on this feels logical enough to me. And I'm happy to explain it to someone else. If they don't think it is logical, then either I'm going to learn something or I'm going to say, no, I still feel the same way, but thanks for sharing your perception. It doesn't have, when you're kind of a quote grown up, it doesn't throw you off so much. But when you get something like that where you're blindsided and you're like, wait a minute, and you're all up in the other person's business and you fear their perceptions of you or their reactions to you, then it often has hit a childhood wound where we didn't know what was happening then. And we came up with some strategy for dealing with it that isn't necessarily working in adulthood anymore.
Right. 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 Yeah. Yeah, I see that. And if I was, well anchored in my grown-up self, then I would have a completely different kind of response to the question, why, after I thought I stated the reason why. That would have just been, I mean, like that, who would you be without that thought that he shouldn't have asked why? Um, okay, why are you asking? Or was that not clear what I said before? What part seems missing to you? Or just something like that that would just, generate an actual conversation instead of generating heat.
Wow. I mean, that's amazing. And that is how a lot of the changes in your marriage happened. Um,
Yeah,
so
that's true.
by you just kind of catching yourself and going, oh, wait, what's going on with you? Or what's going on with me? And actually sort of engaging in a curious conversation where you learned a lot about him and he
Right,
realized you weren't the tyrant he thought you were. And
right.
right. I just kind of what I want to say is just even getting the glimmer of that, those underlying motives of what's causing the charge. And then we don't like the way we reacted, and we don't even know why we got so triggered by them. Suppose you did. What if you did have faulty logic in deciding to not pay off the credit card fully this time around? Can you find the innocence? Can you be the one who stays on your side?
Yeah, I think I can. And I mean, I found myself kind of formulating, well, doing it this way would make me feel better, would help me to feel more in control of things when there's a lot of things that are out of my control. So could we just do it this way? I mean, I might be able to approach it like that. Could we just do it for this month and revisit it next month?
That's so
Or
great. Not just like it's black and white logic. Oh, there's this much money, so it needs to happen that way, and it's obvious. What's wrong with you? Why don't you see it? Is that kind of, yeah, I know. Maybe you want to pay it off. I would feel more comfortable if we don't. Maybe we have a negotiation here on our hands.
yeah,
But
yeah, just more like that, which,
it's, it's
yeah,
so fun when we step in and we have so many more choices when we're, kind of not just being triggered.
it's just so hard to catch it in the moment.
It is, but the fact that you even came back and worked on it means you were really conscious. You're not just building up resentment toward him. You caught
No,
this.
no, that's true. I am looking at, okay, that was weird. What's going on with me that
Right.
makes me so reactive, yeah.
And yeah, that's what happens. The cleaner things get, the more you notice it. I worked through something yesterday was where me and one of my team members, I did not want to find my part at all, but then I just did a worksheet in my head, found my part, said, let's do that. And we made all kinds of changes. And
Awesome.
it's just like that. Okay, this feels good. Who cares whether they acknowledge their quote wrongness or whatever that was I wanted from them before? It's like, let me take care of my side of the street. And so and then you can go and find the innocent motives behind their actions as well. Once you
Yeah,
kind of,
that's true. That's
so
true.
yeah. Can you
Yeah,
see that
that,
they got hold of belief that made them feel hurt or threatened by you, or why he asked that question? I won't read this, but yeah, go ahead.
yeah, just, that he has certain expectations or certain ideas about how money should be done so as not to endanger our credit rating or whatever, because that's where his security is really invested in, keeping everything polished, so to speak.
Yeah,
So it's
yeah,
not necessarily logical for him either. It just feels safer to him to do things in that way. And
right.
that, if I can recognize that, that makes it easier not to see him as like stupid or or misguided or whatever. But no, this is what he learned about what feels safe to him. And that's all I'm trying to do, is make me feel safe with how we do what we do with the money this month too. So then
Yeah,
I'm feeling much more like we're we're on the same page. We have something in common here. We just have different ideas about how to get to it.
Right. And you know, might even then become curious about, oh, well, if we do this, since you're the expert on credit ratings and things, how is this going to affect our credit? Maybe we do want to find other ways to make this work. Let's put our heads together. And, you know, whereas if you're defending your right to make this decision and all that, it could be that you might end up feeling safer letting him be part of this, you know, decision
Yeah.
too.
Yeah. Yeah.
You
I
know,
can see that.
can you forgive them for believing in the heat of a moment whatever they were believing? Can you just let them think it for as long as
Yeah.
they do? Can you
Yeah.
be content that you're okay whether or not they see it? Can you find that they're okay too? Um, and then again, debunk your worst case scenarios. Once you've gone through the anger, hurt, defensiveness, ask what fear was driving it. So what do you think you were afraid of when he hijacks the conversations in a general way or in this specific way?
I think it's kind of losing my autonomy. I mean, you know, what my parents did always was hit the override button, and what they said went, and it didn't matter
Right.
what impact it had on me. So that vulnerability, I think, is what gets triggered again. That
Well, and especially if you were a little scared about the money thing and you were making a decision on your own behalf to help you feel safer, and then he tries to override that. Yeah, I'm gonna get
yeah,
controlled, and it's, you know, yeah.
yeah. And then the next thing you know, you're in a power struggle, and that's like not gonna end well.
Right. Yeah. So, and again, in looking at this fear thing, you can say, well, what is my fear? My fear that we'll run out of money, my fear that he thinks I'm stupid, my fear that, you know, or whatever those are, and just say, well, what if that does happen? Can you absolutely know that that's a bad thing? You know, and do you want to take action to prevent it, or is it just you can't know? We cannot predict the future. So is it helpful to run my life and my reactions to this person based on a fear I have? You know, like I would say Linda and people, lots of, we worked last week, somebody had this situation is it'll never get better. You know, so if we have that fear that, oh my goodness, this thing that's going on here is never going to get better. And this is the rest of my life looks like this with my time not being respected. And, you know, and as opposed to, wait a
Right.
minute, what we cannot predict the future, but we're acting out of that when we have our fear and we're blaming them for making us feel that way. You know, you're the one who's, you know, disrespecting my ex, and therefore I quote can't forgive you. So ultimately, you know, having reconnected to both yourself and the other and worked through the fear of whatever you think is going to happen, question that, whether it's even true, you can stay solid and living happily with your dear self. Advocate for that one, knowing that they were doing the best they could. Self solidarity means committing to never abandoning yourself or letting your safety and happiness depend on their thoughts, words, and actions. Hold that part of you that got hurt close. Let it melt into your heart and keep it absolutely safe and with you at all times, no matter what others are doing, just as you would a baby, the way we won't let anyone or anything hurt our baby or take a baby away from us. Once you feel safe, you'll be able to hold them in your heart as well. There are no sides to take. You get to love both of you. And then you get to open your heart, you know, whether they do or not. So notice, you know, in your worst fears, so open your heart. Notice that even if your worst fears did happen, the worst part of that would be feeling unforgiving and separate from yourself and from them. And that's already happening. So opening your heart is is the thing, you know. So whatever you thought was, you know, the fear was going to happen, in some ways you've already created that through the separation and the unforgiveness and the stories of what's going to happen. So This is really kind of like a feeling thing where you can actually lay down and see, is there anything left here? Or can I just completely open my heart to who I was in that moment and to who he was in that moment? And that's, when creativity really floods in. And then watch if there's a story said, yeah, but why am I always the one that has to work on myself? What? Why am I always one that has to come up with systems about time and calendar and but if we're the ones who want it, then, and we say other people aren't taking us seriously, then it's up to us to take ourselves seriously and ask for what we want. So, all right. Thank you.
Welcome. Thank you.
So anyway, it's, just reading these ideas. This is the short version again. And just thinking about how forgiveness of yourself is tied up with forgiveness of others, how your actual triggering can go back to a childhood wound or a blind spot in your psyche that makes you feel like the other person is the enemy, when you can actually see that they were just acting out of their childhood wounds too, or out of their perceptions in the moment, and none of it was really so personal. And marriage is the ideal place to trigger childhood wounds, and also the place where we can have such amazing collaboration and cooperation and be our best selves too, if you know what to do to let that stuff evolve you.